Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my speech in this crazy times we are living in. But if you are from the Midwest, as I think most of you are, because I'm trying to address our class here, I think I can guess what your preferred alcoholic beverage is. It seems crazy, but I'm going to hold up a few alcoholic beverage options, and I'm going to say at least half of you are going to choose one of these. So we're going to start with an ice cold beer. Then we're going to move to a nice chilled wine. Or, if you're a real partier, we have some hard liquor and some vodka. But with everyone here mostly being from the Midwest, or Wisconsin specifically, I'm going to say that about 50% of us are going to choose beer. So if we can get a raise of hands in the class. Looks great, it's above 50%. I love it. So many of you wonder how I was able to successfully predict 50% of your guesses right off the bat. And I tell you, it's not that hard, because if we look at cultural influences from Europe that were brought over to the United States, I could do that. So, within Europe, there are three distinct cultural regions, and each has its own influence across the world. When we examine the Midwest in particular, we can see a strong influential tie to the Germanic region in Europe throughout our diet, through our diet, language, and livelihood. So now listen closely to learn more about how Midwesterners love their beer and beef. First, let's dive into the European regions themselves. First, we're going to start with the Latin region, which is going to be highlighted on this map with the orange color. It's kind of a little hard to see, but it's going to be countries like France, Spain, and Italy are the most commonly known ones. So we look at their diet to begin with first, and we kind of see a very light all-around diet. We see light grain like wheat, very lean meat and sheep and goat, and then vegetable-wise are like grapes and olives, which translates to their alcoholic preference of wine. Then we move to their livelihood, and we see it's very industrialized, especially Italy compared to the rest when these regions were first formed. Very clean. They were always very clean and tidy people, the way they carried themselves in society. And then very orderly. They had a strong influence in the Latin region from the Roman Empire. So they kind of followed that way of, strict order throughout their daily lives. And then we look at their language, and that's like a Latin Romance language. So, of course, French, Spanish, Italian, all those kind of, nice flowing Latin Romance languages. Now we're going to go to the second least influential on the Midwestern culture is the Slavic region. So going back to our map, that's going to be all the countries highlighted in the white. So Ukraine, Russia, Slovakia, and a couple mixed in here like Macedonia. And we look at those, first looking at their diets. It's a very big variety of landscape that they have, so they kind of incorporate all the different grains that inhabit across Europe. They commonly pigs and sheep for their protein of choice, variety of vegetables too, and then looking back at earlier, their preferred alcoholic beverages, like a hard liquor, commonly vodka. Then we look at their livelihood. They're very clean, like the Latin regions, but very religious. They have a strong tie to their religion, and they kind of focus and live their life around that. And they're quite distanced in their culture, even though, they're heavily tied in right next to the Latin region. They kind of distance themselves through all that. And then the language is a heavy Slavic language, so Russian and Ukraine, kind of that more aggressive tone to it. Now looking at the Germanic region, which has the heaviest and the most direct influence on the Midwest, diving right into their diet. Very, very heavy rain, dark regions in this. So they have, very heavy grain such as barley that they consume most common. And then cows and pigs are their very common choice for protein, and then milk and potatoes for, veggies and their fruits, I guess. Not really fruits, but not very many fruits are apparent in this region. But then the barley and all of that translate to the beer of their preference. Their livelihood, rough compared to Latin and Slavic. They were always made fun of for being dirty people and stuff like that. Little chaotic, still orderly, whatever, had their ways of society, but just, from the outside it looked chaotic. And then, farming was their main way of livelihood. And then language, the Germanic language, there's multiple in each, but obviously the one we take away from this is English. So going right from the Germanic region to its influence on Midwestern culture, with the diet, Wisconsin is known as the dairyland of the United States. So right there you have that direct tie to the milk and the cows that the Germanic region heavily relied on for their daily diet. And then beer is a funny thing here. USA Today did a study in Europe and the United States. And in the United States, the country or the state with the highest consumption of beer was Wisconsin at 33.6 gallons per person per year. And then you look over in Europe, in Germany, which falls in the Germanic region, they were the highest country in Europe at 27.4 gallons per person per year. So right there, two distinct cultural ties right off the bat. Then looking at their livelihood of the farming, Wisconsin, according to stuffaboustates.com, Wisconsin is 45% farmland. And then you look at, an equivalency to Europe, and it's 39% in Northern Europe, which consists of the Germanic region. So again, another direct tie that you see, and then language is quite apparent with the English language transferring over. And so then we revisit the question of some of you may wonder how I was able to successfully predict that 50% of your preferred alcoholic beverage was beer. I was just here to inform you that it was predictable through cultural influences from Europe. Within Europe, there's the three distinct cultural regions that we discussed, the Slavic, Latin, and Germanic, and each has its own influence around the world. But when we examine the Midwest, we see all of those direct ties to the Germanic region. So now I hope you can see that each cultural tie from Europe to you in Wisconsin is from the Germanic region. So now, everyone, go out and enjoy some beer and beef.